Coming up on Tech News today, Microsoft's new tablets Surface. It's new Surface tablets. Also, is the iPhone 5S a success? We've got some numbers. And Steam arriving in the living room in parts. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, September 23rd, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free trial and 20% off, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT9. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, other Apple products, and smartphones are worth at gazelle.com. And by ProXPN. ProXPN is a virtual private network that allows you to use the internet the way it should be, anonymously and without oversight. For 20% off your new account, go to proxpn.com/twit and use the code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Maya Zakhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Sarah Lane is stuck in a really, really bad highway closure. Hopefully she'll get here at some point during the show. We're keeping our fingers crossed. But meanwhile, we got the top 10 stories of the day for you in the News Fuse. Microsoft announced two new Surface tablets today. The Surface Pro 2 has a Haswell processor, better battery life, 64 gigs of storage, and runs $899. There's also a 512-gigabyte version for $1,799. That one has 8 gigs of RAM, too. The Surface 2, not the Surface 2 Pro, but the Surface 2 is the successor to the Surface RT. It's thinner and lighter, better battery life, 32 gigabytes of storage, and will cost you $449. Meanwhile, the RT will remain on sale for $349. Microsoft also announced new accessories, including a new type cover, a new touch cover, and the brand new power cover, which contains a 30-watt-hour battery. All the new products go on pre-order tomorrow, September 24th at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and arrive October 22nd in 21 countries.
Apple sold a higher-than-expected 9 million iPhone 5S and iPhone 5C models in the first 3 days following the Friday launch of the 5S, and Apple shares rose 4.5% to $488.64 in early trading following the good news. Sales of the new models combined were nearly double those of the iPhone 5 in the first weekend after its launch a year ago. Wall Street analysts had expected Apple to sell about 6 million of the new iPhones.
The world's biggest retailer, Britain's Tesco, has introduced its own tablet. The Huddle, with no vowel, well, one vowel, HUDL, is a 7-inch Android tablet with 16 gigabytes of storage that sells for £119. It's the equivalent of about $190 here in the U.S. The device will launch in Britain to begin with, but Tesco says it is considering rollouts in Europe and Asia.
Chaos Computer Club, a European hacker group, says they figured out a way to beat the Apple Touch ID fingerprint sensor using easy, everyday means. Now, according to a hacker by the handle Starbug, you'd need a 2400 DPI photograph of a person's fingerprint from a glass surface. Then that image would be laser printed at 1200 DPI. The final step is using latex or wood glue to create a sheet with the fingerprint that can fool the iPhone.
No, that's all. That's easy. On Friday, Apple introduced an update for Apple TV to give the set-top box new features like iTunes Radio. After reports that the update was bricking some Apple TVs, the company pulled the update on Saturday night. If you ended up with a bricked Apple TV, you can connect it to your PC by a micro USB cable and restore it using iTunes.
An official BlackBerry blog post has explained that the BBM app has been pulled from Apple and Google Play stores because it caused issues. The Android app has now been disabled, but customers who downloaded the BBM for iPhone app before it got pulled will still be able to use it. BlackBerry's Luke Reimer assures potential customers, as soon as we are able, we will begin a staggered country rollout of BBM for Android and continue the rollout of BBM for iPhone.
A class action lawsuit filed in the district court in San Jose, California against LinkedIn claims that that company accessed members' email accounts without authorization, accessed address books, and sent marketing information to contacts. LinkedIn lawyers say the claims are without merit and not true. LinkedIn does ask new users if they would like to share email contacts.
The New York Times reports that a Federal Aviation Administration panel will meet this week to relax restrictions on when electronics can be used on aircrafts. The Times says that certain activities like reading ebooks or listening to audio would be allowed, but phone calls and Wi-Fi use would still be restricted. The panel will recommend the new policies by the end of the month, and they could go into effect next year.
They keep teasing us with that. LG announced a new smartphone, the View 3, with a 5.2-inch 1280 by 960 screen, 4:3 aspect ratio, 2.26 gigahertz quad-core Snapdragon 800 processor, and a 13-megapixel camera. Android 4.2.2 phone goes on sale in Korea September 27th. They haven't announced a price yet.
Netflix won 3 Emmy Awards for House of Cards last night, becoming the first company to win the awards for online-only shows. Original shows produced by Netflix had received 14 nominations total, 9 of those for House of Cards alone. David Fincher won for Best Directing in a Drama Series for House of Cards, Chapter 1. The show also won 2 Creative Arts Emmys for Outstanding Casting and Outstanding Cinematography.
And right before the show started this morning at 10 a.m., Valve made the first of apparently 3 announcements on their website announcing Steam OS. We've been hearing possibilities of this. It's a free operating system built on Linux and meant for your TV. In fact, the URL says living room, so that's what they're talking about. They say it will be available soon and free forever. This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Squarespace.com. You know how much we like Squarespace. It's the all-in-one platform, makes it easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. And we'd like to check out the sites you've built with Squarespace. Send a tweet with a link to your Squarespace website. We're still collecting these. Use that hashtag #TwitSquarespace. We'll take a look at these sites, and we might choose your Squarespace site to mention in a future episode. But it really is fun to see all these different ones. You can go out there, search that hashtag #TwitSquarespace right now and see a bunch of them. Squarespace is always improving their platform, new features, new designs, even better support. I don't know how they improve on it, but they do. They have more than 20 new beautiful templates for you to start with, style options, easy to use. You know, I just put out a new self-published book, and I have a site for that. And I was able to just add the book by putting in the Amazon URL. And it's so easy to do all this stuff. Even if you do run into a problem, they have support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it starts at just $8 a month, including a free domain name if you sign up for a year. The mobile-ready designs, you've heard me talk about how great it is that they adapt to the screen that your site is showing on without you having to do anything. But you don't even have to take my word for it. Start a trial right now. No credit card required. Start building your website. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use the offer code TNT9 to get 20% off and to show your support for Tech News Today. Hey, we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. Squarespace, everything you need to create an exceptional website. Well, hopefully Sarah Lane will join us, but in the meantime, we have a great guest to help us discuss the stories of the day. Charlotte Henry, freelance journalist from the UK, is joining us. How's it going, Charlotte? Thanks for filling in for Sarah unexpectedly in a way.
For Sarah, but it's lovely to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. You can find Charlotte's work at charlotteahenry.com. And let's start in talking about these Microsoft Surfaces. Apparently, all the journalists had already seen these because the NDA lifted as the announcement was happening, and tons of reviews were put up. People had hands-on, so this wasn't a big surprise. But 2 Surfaces, Surface Pro 2, it looks pretty much like the Surface Pro did before. It's got some Dolby certified speakers in there, much better performance and battery life, partly because of the Haswell processor, but Microsoft says they've made some tweaks to improve the operating system and extend that battery life. They're claiming 75% better battery life over the original Surface Pro. They've got that power cover now, which can give you 2.5 times the battery life by just putting that keyboard with the battery. They have a docking station, which a lot of people were very impressed by. 3 USB 3.0 ports, 1 USB, let's see, no, 3 USB 3.0, 1 USB 1.0. That doesn't make any sense. I think that's wrong. But they've got several USB ports, some 2 and some 3. Mini display port, Ethernet, audio in, audio out, power, and can power 2 monitors. Also new versions of the type cover and the touch cover. The type cover now comes in 4 colors: pink, blue, purple, black, and backlit. The Surface 2, they dropped the confusing RT out of the name, is the successor to the Surface RT. That will launch with Windows 8.1 on it, as will the Surface Pro, I'm sure. Comes with Outlook now. Comes with a free 200 gigabytes of SkyDrive for 2 years. $449, so a little bit cheaper than the Surface RT when it launched. Charlotte, what do you think of these Microsoft Surfaces? I think they're fine. Do they turn your head? Do they make you think about getting a Surface?
I mean, no, I think they're a great piece of kit. They're very, very powerful. They're more equipped than, I mean, their specs are really beat out the iPad, don't they? Even the top new iPads, apart from maybe the Retina display. But I don't think it would turn me away from an iPad. One thing I do really like about it, though, is the idea of having Dolby speakers in a tablet. Because, I mean, I love watching, you were talking about Netflix in the news feeds, and I love watching Netflix on my iPad, but it sounds pretty horrible unless you put a pair of headphones in. And, if you've got this multimedia center in your hand, which a Surface could be, and you've got some decent speakers on there, I think that is something that's really going for it. But it's not so cheap that I think it's going to turn your head like some of the Android tablets do.
The Surface Pro 2, I think the biggest thing for me about these devices is the new accessories. The docking station for a Surface Pro, that to me, because it's Microsoft's trying to hit like every single point. So if it's kind of a laptop, that's the one thing I think it fails at. But as a tablet, it's very good. As a laptop, you can kind of balance it on your lap. Apparently, the new kickstand has got a new angle, so it's supposed to be a little bit more comfortable to use in the lap. But then taking it home and making it a full-fledged desktop station with that docking station, I think that's going to be quite interesting. I know a lot of other companies have had docking stations like that, but Microsoft's trying to do like an all-in-one solution that can pretty much do everything at once. I'm just curious if it's going to be good at any of the three, as opposed to just this tablet.
Would you ever really replace your? I was just thinking, would you ever replace your laptop with a Surface? I mean, we've all been, I think, skeptical in the past about touchscreen laptops. You know that you sort of get the gorilla strange hand where you're touching the screen, and you'd have that obviously with the Microsoft Surface. I'm not sure I really like the idea also you can plug in another monitor, but I just don't see that anyone would replace a laptop and use a laptop and not have a laptop and have a Surface instead, even the top of the range Pro.
Well, I know that Surface Pro, the one thing they did is they changed the way the kickstand works. So when you have it on your lap, it's a lot easier to use as a laptop. And they also, and that's kind of interesting that now you've got a laptop with a kickstand, and they've improved the type pad, and they've given you this battery version one, the power cover, sorry, type pad cover. I don't think that I would replace a laptop with the Surface Pro, though, when you've got things like the Yoga and some better products from Lenovo out there. I feel like if you really want to have that laptop / tablet hybrid.
Yeah, I think the Yoga is still a much better option on that. I think even though the Microsoft name will take the Surface a long way, I think probably that Lenovo Yoga really would, be much further ahead in the sort of tablet, laptop, cross hybrid.
And this is Windows RT 8.1 on the Surface 2, which is, it takes the RT out of the name, but it's still not the full Windows 8. That's my problem with not getting a Pro. To me, you pretty much have to get the Surface Pro if you want to take the best advantage of this. I have a Windows RT Surface, and I try to use it. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? I really think this is a better piece of hardware than any other tablet I've used. But I don't have all the apps. They've gotten better. They now have an official Twitter app, and they have 100,000 apps now instead of 10,000 apps, and that's great. But I still don't have all the apps that I use on iOS or Android. Android now has caught up. Pretty much everything I can do on iOS, I can do on my Nexus 7, but I can't do it on the Surface. And I feel like that's still the problem with the RT. I don't worry about that with the Pro, though, because I can take advantage of any app that Windows has. So I can use it like Windows. And I'm like you, Ayaz. I think that dock makes a big difference. Let's talk about Tesco getting into the tablet business. You think Microsoft getting into the tablet business was weird?
Yeah.
Ayaz, tell us about this.
Yeah, so British grocery chain Tesco. They're introducing a 7-inch Android tablet called the Huddle. It's spelled HUDL, as Tom, you mentioned that in the news reviews. Interesting naming convention. Now, they're going to be offering movies through Blinkbox, an online on-demand movie service that Tesco bought a while ago. Now, for specs, 16 gigabytes of storage, 1.5 gigahertz quad-core processor, runs Android 4.2.2. That 7-inch screen's got a resolution of 1440 by 900. So this isn't like a piece of junk or anything. It's got 9 hours of battery life, according to Tesco. Wi-Fi only, so no 3G or 4G options available. Price at £119, about $190 US. The BBC interviewed Matt Atkinson, Chief Marketing Officer, saying that the Huddle is commercially viable because the comparisons to the Fire, Kindle Fire, it's not making any money. This apparently is commercially viable. And the big question of why would a grocery store do this, the BBC actually asked Atkinson, the Chief Marketing Officer, and here's what he had to say.
The point is really about making life better for the customer. And so what we've tried to do here is to engineer something that's affordable, colourful and accessible. The point of this is about engineering something that really works brilliantly well, has a great range of services on it, and takes that into the heartland of Britain, because everyone deserves a tablet.
You've not done this with computers, of course, have you? You've not got...
Charlotte, does it seem to make any sense? I mean, that's an interesting idea, because everyone deserves to have a tablet, I think was his answer there. Does this make any sense that a grocery chain is selling a tablet?
I mean, Tesco isn't just a straight-up grocery store. They do sell things like game consoles, video games, DVDs, televisions. They do sell this stuff. I've never seen them produce their own brand of it before, but it's not so unthinkable you would go and buy electronics in one of the major Tesco's. I think the most interesting thing the Chief Marketing Officer said was, we think everyone should have access to services online. To my mind, that says what they want is people to do their online Tesco shop online. And they're going to put this tablet into people's hand so they can buy Tesco's products much easier.
That makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, especially, and I don't know if this is true, but if they have a Tesco app front and center when you launch that thing that you can open up and do your shopping right from Tesco, it'd be almost stupid if they didn't do that.
Yeah.
And I think the equivalent for U.S. listeners or U.S. viewers is something like the Walmarts, especially the super Walmarts that have the grocery stores in them. That seems to be what Tesco is like, if you want to wrap your head around it that way. And if Walmart came out with its own brand of tablet, I think people would not be that surprised. So this makes sense. And when you put it that way, it's kind of genius in the idea of saying, hey, let's get our customers used to shopping online, because that's the future of our retail business. And we're trying to stem this decline. Tesco's business has been declining. On the other hand, is it better to come up with your own tablet that really isn't that much cheaper than, say, a Kindle Fire or an Android? Or should they have just gone like full press? We're going to sell tablets that have, the ability to shop Tesco. I guess they can't pre-install the Tesco app. That would be the big difference.
Well, and the customization.
I think
Go ahead, Charlotte.
I was just going to say, I think the pre-install is one of the big issues. Yeah. And also just have it, if they can create some kind of ecosystem and quick buy, one-click buy, how Amazon do it with the Kindle Fire, I think they could be onto a winner. But they've got to get it into people's hands first. And I'm not sure how many people are going to really fancy that ahead of an Amazon, a Kindle Fire or something.
Yeah, the customization to the Tesco Huddle, it actually has a little T on the bottom left. That's when you actually go into the Tesco universe when it comes to buying things. Otherwise, it looks pretty standard. It looks like any other Android tablet. Maybe hats off them trying to do different colors. There has to be something to stand out. If you're in the supermarket or you're in a Walmart or giant location, what's going to make this thing pop compared to a Nexus or a Kindle or any of that stuff? I'm just thinking that in the U.S., Barnes & Noble tried to do their own reader, and you think that would make a lot of sense. They had tablets, and they couldn't make it really work for them. I don't know what kind of success a store like this would have, because even Walmart in the U.S., they own things like Voodoo, but they don't bother to make hardware anymore. They just have the software side of the services.
It's a Chinese manufacturer making the Huddle, right? So it's not even like Tesco's making it. They're probably just, my guess is it's probably Foxconn. I don't know that. Maybe as you've researched this enough to know who it is. Let me know if I'm wrong. But if it were, Foxconn's been making a lot of noise about wanting to design as well as manufacture their own devices, and this would be the perfect way for them to do that. Is to kind of white label it and then sell it to Tesco, slap the Huddle name on it or whatever, silly name, and then Tesco gets all the credit for it, but they haven't done anything. They haven't done any design or manufacture.
Can't find if Foxconn is behind this or not. This seems like that sounds about right though.
Everything I've read just says a Chinese manufacturer. That's my best guess at that, but it is just a guess.
It'll be Foxconn or something similar, won't it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Sarah is still stuck in traffic. It's pretty bad. They've shut down the highway. It's not just like bad traffic. Like there is no traffic going north on 101 from San Francisco to Petaluma right now. So I've been getting updates from her, but it doesn't sound hopeful. She was going to talk about the final announcement of sales figures from Apple for the 5S and the 5C. 9 million iPhones during the launch weekend. Combining, they didn't break out individual models, but iPhone 5S and 5C. Apple blew away its previous record, as is usual. They always sell more than last time, so that's not a disappointment. Shipping dates for the 5S have slipped into October now. 5C still in stock. And ready to ship within 24 hours. If that tells you anything about the demand, though. In fact, a company called Localytics examined over 20 million unique iPhones, investigated the breakdown by U.S. carriers and global activations, and says that the 5S is outpacing the 5C by a factor of 3.7 times in Japan, and by a factor, or in the United States, 3.7 times, and by a factor of 5 times in Japan. Analysts had predicted between 5 and 8 million, so Apple beat the analyst predictions. Charlotte, what do you make of these numbers? Is this as expected, or is this really good? And does the breakdown between 5S and 5C really matter?
It's business as usual, isn't it, for Apple? They just, every time they put out a product, everyone goes and buys it. I mean, we've seen people in London in the big store, the big store in London here on Regent Street. There were queues again. They made a little bit of a shortage, and there are queues. People really, really want these products. I'm surprised that the gap is so big between the 5S and the 5C. I think the 5C could, in the long term, prove to be quite popular with people who don't want to spend quite all that money on an iPhone, because you get pretty good bang for your buck on the 5C. I've seen one, and it's a pretty nice piece of kit. It looks a bit plasticky compared to the 5S, but it is still pretty nice. And so I'd be surprised if that gap doesn't shorten over the coming weeks and months.
9 million. They sold 9 million of these things. I mean, I'm just kind of curious about how
ridiculous.
The 5C definitely gives Apple a nice splashy thing that they can show off. It's one of the first things when you go to apple.com. The 5C is the thing that shows up, not the 5S. It's this great visual cue to let everyone know there's been a refresh. The 5S, obviously, with not a real big redesign, a slightly different color, a new Touch ID sensor, that kind of thing. So it doesn't look, astonishingly different. I'm just surprised that they're still selling it that well, considering there's so much competition out there. There is the Galaxy S4. There are a bunch of Nexus products. There are LG products. The fact is, Apple, for some reason, still has it, even though a lot of people are like, oh, Apple, they're waning, and Samsung's totally taking over, and they have in the Android space. But they can still sell 9 million of these things, and this is the little refresh version. I wonder what the 6 is going to do compared to this.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind, too, is every time they launch an iPhone, they add a few more international markets. So the last time they launched the iPhone 5, they launched it in 9 markets. This time they launched it in 11 markets. That's going to juice those numbers up. I'm not saying that these are bad numbers. In fact, they're not. I think they're great numbers for Apple. But they are always going to ensure, as long as they have more countries to add, they're going to ensure a possibly bigger number by having a few more markets launch at the same time. I do think that the 5C not selling as well in this first weekend probably is explained by the fact that these are the enthusiasts. And the enthusiasts look at the 5C as, they slapped some color on the iPhone 5. I have an iPhone 5. I don't care about that. I want the 5S. The 5C is going to be, in my opinion, more popular with a general audience that just wants to save money and have an iPhone and comes in and says, oh, instead of an old iPhone, it's a new iPhone, but it's cheaper. And those probably will sell better towards the holiday season rather than to the slobbering crowd that goes and lines up as they have been this weekend.
I think there's going to be a lot of nice coloured iPhones under the Christmas trees this year. I think that 5C is going to sell like hotcakes over the holiday period. I think you're spot on, Tom. I think that also for perhaps younger kids who want their first iPhone, it's brilliant. It's not a phone made of glass. If you drop it, it's probably more likely to survive than the 5S. It's a little bit cheaper. It gives you most of the stuff you want. I think it's going to really shoot. I think that graph is going to really shoot up on the 5C.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It looks like Sarah Lane finally made it in through the traffic. Sarah, thank you.
That was an interesting commute this morning. I went from completely stopped, where people had actually gotten out of their cars and kind of like stretched and stuff, to like going 65 again. It was a strange morning. Sorry to be late. Happy to be here now.
No problem. Not
And
your
hi,
fault.
Charlotte.
And
Hey, Sarah.
yes, Sarah, Charlotte, Sarah. Real quickly though, before we break for an ad, Sarah, we covered all the notes on the iPhone, and we kind of gave our opinions on those numbers. Do you have any like top line thought before we move on?
Well, you know, as recently as yesterday, because I was hosting Twit, we all sort of said, do we think that Apple's going to do these combined numbers Monday morning? And sure enough, they did. So I think that, again, it's not a huge surprise that Apple just doesn't want to break out 5S versus 5C anymore. It's just iPhone sales, which look, according to what analysts were hoping at the top end, which look really healthy. Tom, I agree with you. I think that the 5C is just an interesting new line in the iPhone line. It's probably more of a holiday, it would see more of a holiday bump in numbers. But then again, it doesn't mean that the numbers aren't healthy. It just seems as though, again, the 5S is the phone to get for anybody who's looking just for the top of the line iPhone.
Yeah, for the early adopters.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Let's take a quick break. We've got all of these new products. We've got new Surfaces. We've got new iPhones. So we've got all kinds of new stuff coming out all the time. And you may be thinking, I'd like some of those new things, but I don't have the money for that. And I have this old thing. What do I do with it? Well, this episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle. That new iPhone is here, and Gazelle.com wants to buy your used iPhone. For a limited time, Gazelle is allowing you to lock today's pricing for your iPhone while giving you until October 31st to send it in. Now, they always give you 30 days, but if you locked it in today, normally that would expire October 23rd. They're saying we're going to give you extra time. Lock in your price for an iPhone right now. We'll give you to the end of October 31st, to send that device in. That means you'll have time to get the new iPhone, however long it takes, before you send them your old one. Gazelle makes selling your used gadgets fast and simple, too. I do it a lot. GAZELLE.com. Find your item. Tell them the condition. They'll even buy broken iPhones and iPads. Get a risk-free offer for your gadget and free shipping. Then you'll get paid fast by check, PayPal, or an extra 5% with an Amazon gift card. It's fast shipping, it's fast processing, and you get the easiest way to get some money in your pocket for that new phone, especially if you're selling an iPhone. You got till the end of October 31st, and you always get 30 days no matter what you're selling to have time to go get that new gadget. So go to Gazelle.com right now, get an offer for your iPhone, lock in today's price, send it in by October 31st. Do it now, though. Lock in that price because your iPhone may lose value the longer you wait. Thanks to Gazelle.com for their support of Tech News Today. Let's talk about BlackBerry. We had that BBM story we mentioned in the news fuse about iOS and Android apps launching and then getting pulled. BlackBerry, I don't think it's spin. Well, it is spin, but I also think it's true that they're like, you know what? This is a good problem to have. We had 1.1 million users. We didn't expect that many people to use it. Part of the problem, though, was these unauthorized apps were accessing that. Behind all this, though, you've got bad news. They reported a net operating loss on Friday of nearly $1 billion, according to its second quarter results, which will come out later this month. That included a write-down of $960 million, partly due to unsold BlackBerry OS X handsets. That's not a good sign. $72 million is apparently for restructuring. They also said that they sold about 3.7 million phones in the last quarter, most of them the older mobile phones. Now compare that to the 9 million over the weekend for the iPhone 5S and 5C. And you probably heard they're laying off 4,500 workers. That's 40% of the workforce. 40% of the workforce. There's a story kicking around about them buying a jet in July, a Bombardier jet that was actually a used jet. And as wow as this sounds, they were going to replace their two more expensive to run Dassault jets with the Bombardier jet. Now they're going to just sell all three jets. They're like, you know what? We're not even going to have a jet anymore. Right now, they're up for sale. Former BlackBerry executive officer, CEO Mike Lazaridis, is apparently talking to some private equity firms about making a bid for this. Most of the analysts agree this company needs to be split up. That's the only way you get the best value out of it. Charlotte, we ask everybody this, and nobody really has a great answer, but what, if anything, can save BlackBerry going forward?
Can anything save BlackBerry?
I know.
I don't think so. I think
there's no saving them, huh?
I mean, I'm still a BlackBerry user. I like BlackBerry. I love BBM, but WhatsApp basically, people thought Android was the death knell for BlackBerry. Actually, it was WhatsApp because load of people my age I know got BlackBerries because we could all communicate nice and free and easy using BBM. And then WhatsApp came and no one needed it anymore. And even though they've done really well putting it on other operating systems, the biggest USP away from the security of BlackBerry had gone, I think, with WhatsApp. I think probably they are going to have to split it up. They've got some decent hardware. BlackBerry 10 is a pretty decent piece of kit. The tablets are horrible. They're never going to sell. I think, if the analysts say that they're going to have to split up, I really don't see any other option. And like you say, it's going to be a vastly, vastly reduced company because suddenly they've just got rid of 40% of their workforce. The problem is they always seem to be 18 months behind. BlackBerry 10 is a really, really good operating system, but it came out far too late. By the time BlackBerry 10 came out, too many people had given up with BlackBerry. And I think that was their biggest problem. They needed to get stuff out quicker. Android have been brilliant at always reiterating themselves, and BlackBerry never did that.
Now, thanks to Riley in the chat room who pointed me to a CNBC story that just posted about 10 minutes ago. CNBC claiming BlackBerry agrees to be acquired by Fairfax Financial. That's a Canadian insurance company for $9 a share. That would be $4.7 billion. That would be interesting because it would be a company buying the entire thing. And I think most analysts were hoping it would get split up, software devices, maybe even intellectual property, into multiple parts. But this would be somebody making a bet that they can at least improve the value of BlackBerry and sell it off. That's usually what these kinds of equity acquisitions from a financial company end up being.
Yeah, $9 a share doesn't sound too bad, does it?
No, not at all, actually. I think the target was just reduced to $9 a share by one of the major analysts. So they got on an on-target offer. It's not bad.
Could this purchase be something like when Silver Lake showed up, bought Skype, and flipped it? Or is this one of those things you think that this company thinks they can do something with BlackBerry in the future? Because if it's a financial institution, I'm not really sure why they would want it other than as an investment and say, hey, look, we can clean this place up, make it more lean, and then sell it to another company that actually wants this stuff. There's other than licensing. I don't think this seems like a long-term plan, but I still have to learn about this company.
Yeah, I don't know much about Fairfax Financial. They're an insurance group, apparently. But a lot of times when these venture capital investors come in and buy things, the one I'm thinking of particularly is when they bought Ziff Davis. They come in and they spruce them up. They give them a little bit of resources. They lean them, make them more efficient, and try to improve the value. They're not worried about the quality. They're worried about the value. And so you often see a lot of layoffs, a lot of cutbacks, that sort of thing. If they're thinking they can do that, then maybe they think they can improve the value of the company and then sell it off to somebody else, maybe in parts down the line. Anyway, well, it looks like at least BlackBerry does have a future for now. You won't have a future, though, if you go around reviewing yourself online and giving yourself 5 stars all the time. Right, Sarah?
That's right, because that would be misleading the public. This is actually interesting. New York regulators have made agreements with 19 different companies, basically regional New York-based companies, to stop misleading customers with things like fake reviews. Combined, these companies will pay a total of about $350,000 in penalties. It varies, $40,000 here. There was a particular transportation company, sort of a fleet of buses, that I think needed to pay about $35,000. But this includes something like a charter bus operator, teeth whitening services, laser hair removal chain. There's an adult entertainment club in there. Also signing to agree with New York are certain reputation enhancement firms. These are firms that are hired by a company to basically put out a bunch of positive reviews and boost results on something like Yelp or Google or Yahoo. What's interesting is in certain cases, the city found that reputation management shops gave good reviews for basically no money, bribed their clients' customers to write more fake reviews, giving them gift certificates somewhere around, $50 here and there, and then went on to review sites that criticized their fake reviews to write fake reviews denying that they wrote the fake reviews. So, this really goes quite deep. They're really trying to convince people these are not fake. But in many cases, I think all of us can say, you can usually spot a fake review unless, I don't know, it's written so well that it's somewhat unclear that these are a bunch of reviewers who are in another country that have absolutely never used this charter service before. But the New York Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, says, when you look at a billboard, you can tell it's a paid advertisement. But on Yelp or City Search, you assume you're reading authentic consumer opinions, making this practice even more deceiving. Again, none of this is really new. We understand that it's happening, but in the case of something like teeth whitening or dental services or something where there's actually a significant health risk if the company or the credentials are not up to snuff, does it make sense for municipal government to step in and say, you just can't have that because people should be making decisions based on reality and not being led by falsehoods? Charlotte, what do you think about this?
It shows, doesn't it, the power of social and peer review and all those things, that companies are just so scared that they're sort of building this grey market industry of fake reviews. I find it hard to allow, when people start legislating for these things, but actually it's really important that if we're putting so much faith in peer review, that we know where it's coming from. And you said, and I think you're right, we can spot, the dodgy reviews, the fake reviews. But I'm not sure everyone can. We all spend a lot of time online trawling through things, looking at content, looking at comment. And yet to us, it is fairly obvious if it's the manager of the hotel saying how fabulous the hotel is. But actually, I think if people are looking and they're rushed and, they're trying to go on the basis of these reviews, it's really important that they're sort of legitimate. And in a way, I'm kind of more comfortable with the companies and the curating sites, the Yelps, trying to weed this out. I think that's probably a better approach. But if New York seems New York are taking a much stricter approach to it, doesn't it?
I do think Eric T. Schneiderman, New York's Attorney General, can't be being perfectly genuine when he says we read City Search and assume you're reading authentic consumer opinions. First of all, I'm not sure how many people are still reading City Search. I assume there's some. But also, when I read Yelp, I don't assume I'm reading authentic opinions. In fact, I read the reviews very carefully because you can sort of tell when they're fake reviews. They're a little light on details, or the details they give aren't particularly relevant. You look for those stories, and I guess there could be an arms race there, and they would just start getting people to write better reviews that seem more authentic. But I always look at the negative reviews to see why they say they're negative, because sometimes I'm like, well, that person's crazy, or that sounds like a unique experience that wouldn't happen that often, or that's the kind of thing that doesn't matter to me. If they're like, I think the yellow is ugly, I'm like, all right, doesn't matter to me. I'm still going to go to that restaurant if everybody else says the food's that good.
Yeah, but you could argue that it's sort of the same as, yes, most people can tell the difference, but what about that one poor, helpless grandmother who signs her life away to the Nigerian prince because she doesn't understand that it was a scam? There's a little bit of if you get duped into a point where you've suffered irreparable harm, then it is a big deal.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about medical, like doctors and financial things like accountants and tax preparation. Those sorts of things can have bad consequences as well.
This kind of comes back to my point that actually I think in a way it's the responsibility of Yelp and those other big companies that we all use and know to make sure that they're weeding out and trying to remove and banning users and doing those things so people can trust those sites again. And I think that's a much more important step than perhaps one politician in one state taking this stand at like Eric T. Schneider's in New York. I think it's for the company's responsibility to make sure that the reviews, which is the basis of their whole company, that's what's bringing the traffic, that they are legitimate.
All right, let's finish up our roundtable discussion with Steam OS. Ayaz has been furiously digging up some details about this. Is there much else other than what they put up on the page yet, Ayaz?
Yeah, well, it took me a while to figure out what exactly they were saying on their page, because it was a big Steam announcement, right? Valve announced the Steam OS, downloadable soon, free OS built on Linux, meant for your television. Freely licensable operating system for manufacturers. That's another point they put in there. They're claiming they've got hundreds of games that will come to the new operating system next year. Now, they touted 4 new Steam features, and this first one seems like a giant one. In-home streaming, play Windows and Mac games on Steam OS machine. So if you have a Steam OS box connected to your television, if you fire up Steam on your Mac or PC, you can play that game on the Steam OS box that way. So you can have full access to your entire library that way. Valve also says it's working with media services, quote, you know and love, which would bring access to, quote, your favorite music and video with Steam. There's not a whole lot of details there. Valve's going to have another announcement on this Wednesday. There's another countdown clock that's going. There's also family sharing. You could take turns playing your family's games, and family options that gives you more control over what titles get seen by whom. So you don't have to have your entire library accessed by your kid. You can have them broken out. And like I mentioned before, there's going to be another announcement on Wednesday, September 25th at 10 a.m. That's maybe the Steam box, the actual hardware that people have been rumored. This has been rumored for a while. And you can see in this image, it's meant for your TV, this operating system. Lots of big graphics there. Charlotte, what do you make of this operating system announcement?
Well, broadly, I'm a huge, huge fan of Steam, so I'm pretty excited about this. I think the games platform, the Games OS, is fantastic. I think they're, all the companies, we've all discussed it on different podcasts, whatever. You guys have discussed it, those. Someone trying to make that box that takes over your living room. I don't see why that can't be Steam. They've already got all the gaming. They've got a huge amount of trust and a huge community there. And I think with this OS, that's a really big step forward. I think it's really, really exciting.
I am excited about this too, and I do think it's important that they say it can bring access to your favorite music and video. So I want more details about that. I want to see how this is implemented, and I think you're right, Ayaz. I think we're going to see hardware partners next, and maybe that's where we start to see more demonstrations of how this works.
The real thing for me with these kinds of, once you put a computer in the living room, this is when things really change. People want this thing to be a rock-solid experience. They want an appliance kind of thing. So if you're going to have something that bridges your PC to your television, this thing better be really good. I know Steam has that 10-foot interface, but if this thing is buggy at all, it's just going to continue that idea that PCs really don't belong in living rooms.
Would you say the most obvious competitor to something like this is the Xbox?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And the PS4.
What would it be if not the Xbox?
Well, see, it seems like this works with another PC. Like, so if you're going to just bring your games from your Steam library that only works on this Linux box, that's one thing. But the fact that if you want to access your full library, because these games won't necessarily be able to play directly on this box, that's where I'm like, this isn't this one box. It kind of needs a partner. So I don't even know what you compare this to.
Well, I believe you can stream the games from over the internet too, or no? That's a fair point. So
in your home network only.
You can only stream. That's the only is the part that I'm looking for, right? If you can only stream your games over your home network, that makes a big difference. I do like the idea that I have all my Steam games downloaded on my Windows XP box. It used to be a Windows XP box. On my Windows box, and I can access them upstairs in the living room. But what would be even better is I don't have any PCs, and I have the Steam box, and it says, oh, well, you've got games in the cloud, so we can access those as well. You should be able to do that.
You're right. Now, it's very limited, the Steam OS information. The actual thing here does not use the word only, but says just turn on your existing computer and run Steam as you always have. Then your Steam OS machine can stream those games over your home network straight to your TV! Exclamation point.
Makes a difference.
See, I don't think it's going to catch on if you're still reliant on your PC being turned on. I think what people want is to go into their lounge, turn on a box, and there's their games and their videos and maybe Netflix or Sky Go and all those things. I think if it's reliant on you running upstairs to turn on the PC, that's going to really put quite a lot of people off. And I think Sarah's right, people will just stick with their PlayStation or their Xbox.
All right, let's move on to today's randomizer. We ran a straw poll with our live audience today, and we had 3 options in there. 1, surf through the web's past on the Internet History Timeline, got 26% of the vote. Liftware spoon, helping Parkinson's sufferers control their tremor, thanks to Icing, who submitted that in the subreddit, 30% of the vote. And the winner, submitted by Captain Kipper, Dragon Con cosplayers who dressed up as Marriott carpet get a cease and desist from the makers of the carpet.
Wow.
Because they were going to sell the pattern. They were going to tell, show people how to do what they had done. By the way, one of the most brilliant costumes I saw at Dragon Con. They blended right in with that ugly carpet.
Did people walk on
amazing.
them? Did they hurt them?
No, I think they survived.
Okay. So it was just clever. It wasn't actually
That's
a
how good the
dangerous
costume is that you had to ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you said that it was a really good costume, so I figure if it's a good enough costume, you don't see them and you might hurt them by walking on them.
I think what's hilarious about this is if you don't know about Dragon Con, you've got thousands of people dressed up as intellectual property, right? Characters from video games, television shows, movies, all over the place. None of them ever get in trouble. But the guys who dressed up as the hotel carpet, they got a C&D.
I've always wondered, I really always wondered about these like the big carpet companies, the people who carpet big casinos in Vegas or Marriott's. And
You've been wondering about them?
I have always.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by this because it's like they're very specific patterns and sometimes they're really bad, but they, designed to be, you have a lot of like tread on them and hold up. So I love the fact that this is the first I'm actually hearing about a company making carpets ever, is that they're sending cease and desist to people who dressed up as cosplay carpeteers at Dragon Con. It's just awesome. That's the most random thing I could have ever hoped for on a Monday.
That is your randomizer. Final ad for today's show. Big thanks to ProXPN for continuing to support us more than ever before. Your online freedom, your online privacy are under threat. Everybody wants to control what you can and cannot see and wants to keep a record of everything you do. Most importantly, though, when you're talking about VPN as a solution, it's that free Wi-Fi at the coffee house, at the hotel, and at the airport where people can sniff your packets. It's not a secure situation. So I always use a VPN, and one of the VPNs I use is ProXPN. Works on almost any internet connection. I haven't found one that it hasn't worked on personally. Creates a secure encrypted tunnel, 512-bit, through which all your online data passes back and forth. Any online application can work with ProXPN, including your web browser, your email, your file sharing, your instant messaging programs. Keeps everything you do hidden away from the prying eyes. Works by OpenVPN or PPTP, excuse me. You can't see where you're from. You can bypass geographical restrictions. Works for Windows, works for Mac, works for iOS and Android. In fact, there's a new ProXPN app for Android in the Google Play Store that supports OpenVPN right now, and they have world-class customer support. Go to proxpn.com/twit for more information. Sign up, especially if you ever use any kind of open Wi-Fi access. Sign up. ProXPN premium accounts are normally $9.95 a month or $74.95 for an entire year, but we've got a special offer. Use the code TNT and get 20% off for the lifetime of your account. That's less than $5 a month on the yearly plan. If you're not satisfied, you can cancel within 7 days for a full refund. So go to proxpn.com/twit and sign up with the code TNT. We thank ProXPN for their support of Tech News Today. Sarah, I'm glad you did make it in because I don't know how we would have done the calendar without you.
No, it's impossible to do the calendar without me. Thankfully, I've made it, and we're looking ahead to October 17th when Ubuntu's smartphone OS will be launching. How about that? It's only three.
So even though they didn't get Kickstart or Indiegogo'd for their hardware, the software's still coming out. You can still put it on your own hardware. Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
It's a message from Michael in Ohio, which I can't say today for some reason. Hey, dear TNT, I teach multimedia technique at Kent State University and was disappointed that neither iOS 7 nor the newest iPhones default to shoot only horizontal video. At the very least, Apple could encourage users to hold their phones horizontally when shooting video. Is electric shock too much to ask?
That seems excessive, especially for a professor of multimedia. But I understand, man. I've done the portrait video out there and suffered the slings and arrows of the public who hate it. I don't understand why people hate it so much. I understand why landscape is better in most situations.
It's because when you put it on your TV, you start seeing these massively large black boxes on the left and right of it.
So what?
But then it's horrible. Then you got to tilt your head and you want to, at least YouTube capture it.
Rubbish. You've got to go landscape. It looks horrible.
Thankfully,
otherwise.
YouTube Capture has like a function where you can actually tell it to not let you record unless you're doing it horizontally. So if you really
I don't understand why people get so upset though, and it sounds like Ayaz is one of those people.
I get really upset. I don't really care.
All right, well that brings us to the end of today's show. Charlotte Henry, what a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it was an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me on. It was great.
Please come back. And,
If you want me, I would love to.
and let folks know where they can follow you in the meantime.
Okay, so if you go to charlotteahenry.com, all my internet stuff goes there. There you go. All my blog feeds, articles I write for everyone else, they all go there. And I'm on Twitter at Charlotte A. Henry.
Excellent. CharlotteAHenry.com. You can also go to our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com, to let us know what stories you'd like us to cover. We look at that each and every day. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT, and you can call us, leave us a voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW, and email us, tnt@twit.tv, and tell us what's on your mind. We will be back tomorrow with an all-new show and Ewan Rankin as our guest. See you then.